I'm the host now. Yay for me. It's fun to be the host. Okay. So we are playing the game today. Good morning. Thanks for coming. Nice to see you all. And I'm going to flip around between the webcams to see which webcams I'm going to use today. I guess I'm going to use that one. Yeah, use the top and bottom one and avoid the middle one today. So that'll be fun. That'll be something to do. It's 1 o'clock. I guess it's time to get this party started. Good. Got my sculpting area clean. Oh, God. Oh, I don't think so. The chat room is open. Somebody started chatting in here. Okay. Hooray for our side. So, noise. Oh, I'm missing all the fun. Damn it. I just knocked my chat out. Oh, well. Okay. So, yeah, I was going to take attendance here because that's one of the silly things that I do. So, Aurora, yo, is here. Yay. All right. And Christopher, welcome. Nice to see you. Elizabeth, Mm-hmm. Rhea, great. So there's those of us who are here, and then there are some of us who are not. And so a few housekeeping announcements to get started. Um, I have gone back to the coursework in e-learning and opened up the previous two projects, Mask 1 and Mask 2. Um, and I don't even know if you guys took a picture of Mask 1 or not, but eventually we're going to have to try to get a picture taken of Mask 1 and uploaded into the homework so that I've got something to grade. The coursework is connected to the grade book, and I'm supposed to try to do all of this stuff in e-learning. And so somehow, at some point, we'll want you to take a picture of the mask. I have fired a whole bunch of masks in the kiln and now just unloaded a bunch of bisque fired masks. So we have a bunch of masks, and I can show you one that are ready for you guys to pick up. And we're going to start painting these things this week or next week as we start to kind of do more than one thing at once, because we're sculptors, so we can walk and chew gum at the same time, although some of us can't seem to teach and chew gum at the same time. So this is now a bisque fired piece of clay, and it's relatively lightweight, probably has a weight of somewhere between 5 and maybe 6 pounds or something like that. And of course, it's my mask, and it's got this little finished off part underneath here so that it will actually catch on a nail so that it can hang on a wall so that we can do this thing. So the next thing to do is to try to get these masks back to you and get you guys to buy some acrylic paint, because of course there's always another thing to buy for art. So I'm going to go shopping at Walmart and pick up some acrylic paint samples from their arts and crafts area. So we've got some stuff to play with. And when I have the little 4-ounce bottles of acrylic paint in a couple of different colors, plus a bottle of white, because it's always important to have a bottle of white for mixing paint so that you can not only mix paints, but tint paint so that it's not just dark colors of paint. Usually we have to deal with tints of paint so that we're dealing with a lot of white mixed in with the paint to keep it into a medium or high key paint when it goes on the sculpture, so that it doesn't get so deadly dark, super dark colors, but rather in a higher key color so that we can see the forms a lot better as viewers. So I think I'm going to do that on Thursday. between today and Thursday, I'm going to go shopping at Walmart because cheap paint and whatnot. If you guys are painters and have acrylic paints at home, yay, fantastic. Use your acrylic paint set for this. And when we're painting the sculptures, I think we're going to mix the acrylic paint with a lot of water so that it's very runny and very flowable. I will demonstrate all of that stuff to you, but we may not use much more or need much more than a 4-ounce bottle of the liquid acrylic paint from Walmart or Joann's Fabric or something like that. You'll definitely won't need more than the tube of acrylic paint if it comes more as a paste instead of a liquid in the tube form of acrylic paint that painters use. So we're going to be using a lot of water to make this paint very flowable so that it'll go on to a rough surface, so that it will go onto a surface that's very, very absorbent, because it's difficult to push thick paint around on a very rough and absorbent surface. So we'll be kind of like priming the sculptures, and then we'll be going in and doing kind of some dry brush techniques and other kinds of faux finishes so that I can demonstrate to you how to do like a bronze faux finish on a sculpture if you want it to look bronze. We'll be playing with several different colors of paint and doing dry brush techniques to blend them together. Sometimes the easiest thing to do is just to do variations on one color, to start off with a deeper value of that color, and then come back with a medium value and then a higher key value of that color. So we've got 3 different values of the same color dry brushed onto a sculpture, and that can look really nice too. So that was all to let you know that we're going to be doing painting of our finished pieces, starting with trying to process the masks. So I'll be want you guys to bring in your other finished mask if you still don't have a finished mask. If you don't have all of your masks done and brought in, I want 2 masks at least. Mask 1 for the first project, and then that was, do whatever you wanted to on the first project. And on the second one, I wanted you to try to do something a little bit more cubism oriented. So we've got 2 masks that are the first 2 projects that we're working on. And so if you still are working on a mask or have one at home that you haven't brought over here, I'd like you to bring it over so that I can dry it out and fire it. And if you've got masks over here that I have fired, because I just unloaded 8 or 9 of them out of the kiln, then we'll want you to be picking those up sometime in the next week or so, so that you can get them back. The best time for you guys to pick up stuff from me is like on a Monday or a Friday afternoon, when Paula is coming to town, for instance, to go shopping. But I'm less busy on Mondays and Friday afternoons, and so I can have my back door open. I can have the masks kind of all laying out either just inside the back door or just outside the back door for you guys to pick up easily. You can also pick up another bag of clay if you're running out of clay for this freeform sculpture project. And so there's going to be a churn here where we are going to be picking up masks, picking up clay, dropping off sculptures and that kind of thing for firing in the kiln. And there will be some churn in the projects where we're going to be sculpting, and perhaps at the same time as we're sculpting, but getting sick and tired of the sculpture, we're going to start painting pieces, maybe as early as next week, starting the painting process with some of the masks. So there's all of that going on. A couple more people showed up to the party. Daniela is here. And so we got to let her know that I see her up there. Daniela, which is it? Yeah, Daniela. Okay. Where the hell are you? In my class. I don't see you in here. What's your last name, Daniela? I forget. Oh, you're in the advanced class. You're one of the big kids. All right, fantastic. And Dylan is here. Fantastic. Dylan is here. And Nessa's here. Welcome, Nessa. Good to see you. Paul is here. Fantastic. Paula. Okay. Paula, Ray, and Nessa, Elizabeth, Dylan, Daniela, Christopher, Aurora. That's it. We're all here today. Okay, so I found out the other day when I was trying to demonstrate this sculpture for you and get this sculpture started, and doesn't it look a lot better when I'm sitting behind it with a black t-shirt, because that helps quite a bit, I'm sculpting on this side of it. I'm sculpting on what you see as the back side of the sculpture, and you can't see what I'm doing. You can't see what my little tiny fingers are doing or what the tools are doing. All you can see is what has happened on the other side of the sculpture, which for me, this is the back side of the sculpture that I can't see. So we're going to solve that problem today. I'm going to switch videos. I've got 3 cameras here, and so I'm going to use the other camera. And so now I've got a camera that is off to my shoulder over here. Now that's horrible in terms of lighting. I'm sorry, this camera really likes to overexpose stuff. I put a black background out there to try to mitigate some of this stuff, although this mask is really a bright object over there. And I've got a whole bunch of paper and crap over here. If I get rid of some of the junk covering this table, maybe it won't be so bad. Okay, because we want to see the sculpture. We want to see me working on this side of the sculpture. So after establishing the sculpture, God, you know what? I could just scoot over here so that I'm working right there by the black background. I'm going to bring my camera with me, because I can do just about anything I want to. So we're going to work over here and it'll be fine. All right, so as I've established a composition for the sculpture, yay. Okay, so basically it's clay that's vertical. It's in a vertical format. It's at least 12 inches tall. I've got a negative space running through the middle of it. I have a more massive side to it, and I've got a little bit less massive side. Some might even call this a linear element over here. Fantastic. So my job is to try to come up with some kind of a vocabulary of form that is relatively simple, because I don't want to have a whole bunch of different elements and pieces and forms and stuff that are just kind of stuck on here as decoration. We want to try to avoid that. We want to have a vocabulary of form that kind of flows and works from one area of the sculpture into the next. And so I'm working my way into this really slowly, just kind of, you know, in the 1970s, they used to have commercials on television. I know that's a really antique concept that was about the yellow pages. And it was like, you know, let your fingers do the walking in the yellow pages. It was how we found telephone numbers for people back in the day, before there was the internet. And so I want you to just let your fingers do the sculpting. Don't even think about this or overthink this too awfully much, but just kind of play with how form flows. Try to differentiate form if you can. I've got this chunk up here that is kind of flowing up this way, and I'm starting to make that flow kind of happen just a little bit more. Maybe this is a little bit more like a wave now. Maybe it's a little bit more like a planar element, at least on this side. And so as I pull the clay up here just with my thumb, and I've changed the nature of this and the contour of this portion of the clay, and now it feels more like a wave under here, and then it crests up here into a chunk of some kind. So I've got a wave, a crest, and a chunk, yay. And then, you know, you can have smooth transitions from one form into another form of your sculpture. I'm sorry, that is so bright. If I killed the light back here, will that help at all? Maybe, possibly. This webcam has a mind of its own in terms of how much it's gonna compensate for the light in this thing. So I've got this wave and then this chunk, and then you can play with the idea of what kind of a transition do you want between these two elements. Do you want them to flow into each other? Because it can be a flowing, smooth transition from one element into another. And I can use the steel rib, the thin steel rib to do that. Or I could make a more abrupt transition. If I dig into the clay a little bit and I pull out like this, and I come in the other way and I kind of dig into the clay and then I pull up, I'm creating a crevice, or some kind of a sharper transition that is that is characterized by a deeper shadow line between the two forms. The form comes down here and then it tucks into a crevice, and then flowing out of the crevice is this round form here. And I hope you can see that. I've also done a little bit of that over here. Right here, there's a little bit of a crevice right here where this round form kind of comes down and then it ends. And what do you want to do with a form? You can, in sculpture, you've got, in abstract sculpture, non-objective abstract sculpture, you've got a few choices. You can either have a crevice that makes a very sharp transition between the end of this form, as if it was almost like a ball joint of a bone or something, and then the next form, which is kind of like the socket joint that the socket and the ball goes into. That's a thing. Or you can have it be a smooth flowing transition that doesn't have a sharp, abrupt transition. So our choices for transitions are smooth and flowing, where the forms flow right through from one side to the next, and it's smooth, and you can kind of just pull your tool right through that smooth transition like that and watch it flow. God, this is a terrible camera. I'm gonna have to change cameras again. You know what? Oh, shoot. What are my choices here? I just don't like this camera. It's just overexposed quite a bit. So I'm going to change cameras. Would anybody like to ask a question or talk a little bit while I play a little bit with cameras? You can unmute your mic and ask a question, and that would be fantastic. I'm going to change cameras right now to this camera. And I'm going to move this camera over there so that it looks at my sculpture, and move this nasty thing out of the way, because this is my overhead bird's eye view camera system here. And now I've got this that I can pull this way, and we can be in here just a little bit more like that. The lighting and the exposure for that camera is just a little bit better. So now this was where I was working in terms of trying to make a transition, and I was trying to smooth and blend that transition so that it was a smoothly blended transition from the bottom of this form. It's a convex bump right here into a concave kind of a flowing transition there. And then I could examine that and decide, do I like that? Do I not like that? Because you're going to play with all of these forms. You're going to slowly evolve them. You're going to slowly develop them. They will morph over time. They're going to change their shape to come up with some kind of a vocabulary of form that works for you as a fairly complicated, yet hopefully visually unified sculpture. And so you'll be making those basic choices. Is this transition going to be smooth, or is it going to be a much more abrupt transition? And I kind of liked the abruptness of the transition. So I made a joint there. I remade my joint so that I've got some flowing movement happening through the linear element, and then boom, visually it comes to a stop there with a harsh cast shadow line right there. So that makes the viewer's eye flow down the form, and then the viewer's eye is forced to stop there and then move on into the next element of the sculpture. From your vantage point right there, I have hollowed out this one little spot right here. It's almost like a little butt that it's sitting on. I've got a lobe of sculpture over on one side and a lobe of sculptural form over on the other side, with a negative space between, so that I've got at least two fairly large feet that this thing is sitting on the side that is visible to you right now. And I've got another one of those lobes, or organic kind of volumetric forms kind of flowing out of here, and it has a very sharp, harsh transition characterized by a deep shadow line right here before this thing kind of comes out. That was the original wave form that I was playing with on that side. So now I'm going to turn this thing, and We're interested in seeing what the sculpture does as a sculpture in the round. It would be nice if it presented different kind of characteristics from every viewing angle. And I don't want us to think of this in terms of sides. I really don't want you to think that you have a front and a side and a back to the sculpture. I don't want to have a four-sided sculpture. I really love to have sculpture that is just, that flows and draws the viewer's eye around the sculpture, pulling the viewer's eye with flowing forms, either flowing linear forms or flowing planar forms, but forms that run on a diagonal, that might run on a twisting, ascending, or twisting, descending kind of a form that can help pull the viewer's eye around the sculpture from all different sides, so that you're forcing the viewer to get on their horse and walk around the sculpture. And because the sculpture is three-dimensional, and you really want to engage the viewer from all sides and have them like continuously just walk around the sculpture, doing laps around the sculpture and getting excited and engaged with your sculpture and your sculptural form. So I'm playing with just kind of pulling,
I do have a quick question for you.
Yes, who said that? What do you want?
Aurora, of course, I always have questions for you. So as I was sculpting, I think a few days ago, I kind of took a step back and I started noticing like a form in the sculpture that almost looked like a facial feature kind of a thing. And I didn't
Is your
put it
sculpture
in.
sitting right there?
Huh?
Is your sculpture sitting right next to your webcam? Let's spotlight you for everybody. You, how do I spotlight you? I want to pin you. I want to spotlight you. Yeah, remove all pin videos. Okay, continue.
But my question.
Okay. So can you point at what you're talking about for us?
Yes.
Okay.
So there we go. So from about this angle right here, there's eye, nose, and mouth.
Ah! Yeah.
And it kind of explodes in, but as you turn it, you kind of lose that depth, right? Because it's actually like holes that go all the way through the sculpture, except for the kind of ribbed area here. But as I stepped back and saw it, it's something that I wanted to keep in the sculpture, because when I do a lot of my abstract work outside of sculpture, I generally add to it until something jumps out at me, and then I emphasize that particular area. But I didn't do that here. I just left it as it was. So I wasn't sure if that's something that I need to mess with to make it not quite so out there, or if I can just leave that part of it.
Oh, it's not obvious. It doesn't obviously look like a face. You can see, you can find the face, and you can use your viewer's imagination to engage people, and they might see and find the face, but it's not like just, you didn't stick a face in the middle of your damn sculpture.
Right.
It's fine. It's great. My only thing that, and we're going to continue trying to make this happen, is you've got a lot of mass down in the bottom of the sculpture and a lot of space, negative spaces and linear elements in the top end of your sculpture. And somehow I'd love to unify top and bottom by bringing a little bit more mass up into some of those linear elements that are way up high, and lightening up some of the mass down below by making the negative spaces bigger, possibly down below. I do like how you have liberated the base from the piece. That's good.
And those actually go all the way through as well.
Those are brilliant. Those are nice.
But one of the things that I did want to talk to you about was, you were talking about how your teacher used to throw people's sculptures off of their desks. So I had added much thicker linear and planar things to the top part of my sculpture.
Yeah.
And in doing so, the sculpture tipped and broke off about from here up of my sculpture.
Yeah.
And so it kind of made me laugh a little bit when it happened, because one, I knew I could fix it, and two, it reminded me of your teacher throwing things, and it was like you were not here to push my sculpture over, but you did. But yeah, no, I'm still trying to figure out how to bring more thickness up into the sculpture, and then some of the areas I'm gonna whittle out a little bit more from the lower half. So
Wow, that's cool. That's great. Thank you for sharing all of that. That was fantastic. And we are actually recording this too, so that's a good thing. I was trying to figure out what to do with the Zoom for you guys because, I can run the Zoom for half an hour, 45 minutes to do a presentation, but you guys are sculpting like for a lab for like 2 more hours. And do you want the Zoom to just stay on so that you guys can talk to each other? Because I can just leave it on. I don't have to end the thing.
I
Um,
would love that because I like talking to other people about,
yeah,
ideas and stuff like that. Even if it's like a separate Zoom meeting area where we can go to work on our sculptures together, that'd be awesome to me.
yeah.
Also, I see PC has a question or wants to say something.
Yes, Paula, what's up? Let's see. Let's see.
I was just going to say, I'm glad that you're keeping those in there because it looks like a face from the one side, but I was going, turn it, because when you turn it a little bit, there's like another abstract face there, and there's another face up toward the top. If you use your imagination, it's pretty cool.
That was really interesting because my friend, I had posted a picture of it on Facebook, and she's like, it almost looks like people crawling over each other to get to the top or helping each other rise. And I was like, well, that's not at all how I viewed it, but that's the point of an abstract sculpture. So thank you.
Well, I think it's great. It makes people use their imaginations.
Yeah, very cool. So one of the things that is not going to be available to you guys, I guess, if I just leave it on, is that if somebody, running the show over here as the host and trying to pin videos and spotlight videos to make things bigger or whatever. So it might not be quite as visually dynamic as it is right now. And I'm all about trying to make this as much of a visually dynamic experience as possible. So it feels like you're in the same room talking to people and you can show and tell and, see stuff. And if I just stop the recording and if I stop actively, running the editing process, we might not have quite that much. But I'd love you guys to be able to just talk to each other. That'd be fantastic. Do you guys have the ability to pin your own videos, to click on the upper right hand corner of your own thing and you get a drop down menu and then you can pin and replace and spotlight for everyone, so you can spotlight your thing and then the camera changes and then you get the spotlight and everybody else is minimized that way. So if you have that ability, then you are golden, because then you guys can continue talking and interacting for as long as you care to, and then people can drop out of the Zoom whenever they want to, and then the last person standing has to close the door and turn out the lights basically for Zoom. But this is kind of what I want to do basically, is just talk about pulling on the sculpture and just kind of, you can either add in the additive process or you can kind of draw out and just pull out places to make these things grow and become larger protrusions or something like that, because we don't know what we want. These things may be volumetric, round, organic forms, but as you kind of pull on them and tug on them and stuff, they may start to morph into more planar elements or something like that. You can also take a whole bunch of extra clay and build along a ridge and an edge and extend something out until it starts to work as a plane. And then you're stuck with a plane, because then you have to try to make that plane work and flow for that portion of the sculpture. And then you're kind of on the hook for making another plane someplace else to answer or echo the plane that you started in the one place. That's the thing, as you develop a vocabulary of form in the sculpture, you might have a thing sticking out on one side and you may have to answer it by kind of pulling and adding or whatever until you have a thing, a protuberance that is similar sticking out on the other side, so that this thing right here is answered by this piece up here, for some kind of strange balance in the composition or in the sculpture. Now I did that really fast without thinking about it, and this may be horrible and hideous, but it's just to demonstrate the idea of having things that kind of evolve as forms, and then you're challenged as an artist, how do I make that work in the sculpture? Do I really want to have this thing, this chunk hanging out here? I turn that part of the sculpture around to really show it to you guys and say, do I really like that? Do I value that? Is that important part of the sculpture? Is it so important and a good form that I want to, kind of create those forms in other areas of the sculpture in maybe 2 or 3 places, so that there's kind of the repetition of that form enough to help to pull the sculpture together. It's interesting and different enough to create variety and a focal point on this part of the sculpture, but there are also other aspects of it present in other parts of the sculpture to provide harmony so that the whole sculpture holds together as a unified sculpture. I wrote for you guys an assignment for this sculpture, and it's in the coursework right now. And I've got some bullet points. I ask you guys, when you're making a sculpture like this, to not decorate it with just little add-on things that I call dingleberries or little mushrooms, because sometimes people like to build a sculpture like this and then they'll put a whole bunch of little mushrooms over here, and then they'll put a whole bunch of little dingleberries over here, and they'll do maybe some other idea up here. And each one of those separate, distinct ideas it becomes a focal point, and it destroys the unity of the sculpture. It destroys the sculpture as a whole composition. So try not to dive into that area where you're just making, let's put a bunch of dingleberries over here and some mushrooms over here and a water spout over here so that I can have a waterfall, because those are totally separate, different ideas that are so distinct and different from each other that they don't really work to unify the sculpture all that much. And I know that you are now everybody's desperately tearing off all the dingleberries off their sculpture now that I said that. Sorry about that, but that's kind of the challenge that we have for this process. So that's me talking a lot. I have a question about found objects before we go. Okay, we can do that. I'm looking at 35 minutes into this thing. I don't have a whole lot more to say or do, except my little demonstration of pulling and working transitions and starting to think about a vocabulary of form. So Paula, let's talk about found objects, because you have a question.
I'm wanting to know, when we do the found object sculpture, say if we wanted to make a certain shape, can we use other things to build up forms if it's not exposed in the sculpture? I mean, does it have to just be trash that we found on it wherever?
I don't know if can you say it one more time? I'm playing with all this bullshit here, so I'm trying to. Do you want to make form like out of clay or something?
Like, say if I wanted to make a spherical shape, could I do a paper mache skeleton underneath of it to make it round?
Yes.
And then, like, if it was newspaper, I could collage that over it. I mean, that's what I mean by using other things.
Yeah, I'm going to do another PowerPoint presentation where I talk about the historic nature of found object sculpture. And a lot of people will use things like wooden boxes. A lot of people will find peach crates or fruit boxes or cheese boxes or something. And so you've got these box forms, and then you put these very special found objects inside the box, or you can attach them to the outside of the box. But the box becomes a structure for hanging a lot of these. This is where we get to play with dingleberries in the found object sculpture. And so, yes, we can use wood to create a base. We could use wood to create a box. And I'm happy to make boxes for everybody who needs boxes. But you can use other things to create a skeleton or a framework to hang your found objects on. So most found object sculptors use some kind of a sculptural skeleton of some kind to hang their elements on. So you're on the right track.
Well, it's not like hanging. It's like if I wanted something to seem as if it was floating in the air like a balloon, but wasn't a balloon.
Yeah,
Does
yeah.
that make sense? That doesn't make sense, does it?
Well, you want to create some kind of structure. You need some kind of a scaffold or structure that will help hold all of these weird found objects together, because it's really hard to glue every single stupid found object together and create enough negative spaces so that it's not just a big pyramid, a big dense pyramid of found objects. And so by using some kind of structure, some kind of architecture like boxes or skeleton or some other kind of thing, you can then, you've got the structure you need to present your objects, but then you can isolate your objects. God, it's hard to do this without running into my stuff here. You can isolate your objects in very nicely defined areas of the sculpture so that they can be seen and appreciated, and they have enough space, a negative space, so that they're not all, stuck together and crowded together. So we will talk about all of that stuff. You've got a really good idea that we will expand upon when we get into that.
Well, the paper mache, it's like paper mache sculpture. I've been looking at it and I kind of want to mess around with it. It'd be a good opportunity.
Yeah, okay, sure. If you have the ability and the space there to work with paper mache and not make too big of a mess in your space, you go right ahead and do it. That'll be fine. I've got a lot of wood here in a very tiny, basic wood shop. And so what I usually do is I will build boxes to order for people who have, assembled dolls and doll parts, or toys and toy parts and stuff like that. So if they want something big enough so that they can put their doll or their doll parts inside the box or outside the box, I can build the box, because not all of you have a wood shop, in your dorm room. And so if you want a wooden box as a starting point, as a point of departure that you can then hang a bunch of stuff on, that would be great. And so we'll talk about that when we get there. That's good. Thank you for the question. That was a wonderful question. Let's see, Catherine and Dylan have their cameras on, but everybody else has their mics off right now. Does anybody else have a question for me, or want to show their sculpture and get some feedback on their sculpture wherever it's at in the sculpting process? I kind of want to open. Catherine, you got your mic open. What's up?
I'm actually struggling with the abstract. This and I've redone it like 6 times. I think you can give me any tips for it, because it's just I hate abstract. It's just something I'm struggling with.
Okay, I hear you're having a struggle with this. Your audio is also breaking up just a little bit. Are you outside in your backyard?
Yeah, in the dorms.
Okay, that's beautiful. You're getting some sunshine. That's fantastic, and fresh air in this age of COVID. Sculpt outside. Great idea. So you're a little frustrated about trying to get started because you get halfway into it and you get mad at it and you tear it apart again?
It looks, it doesn't look like nice abstract art, and it looks terrible, or it looks like a person, and I'm just having a hard time trying to do it, because I don't do abstract. I hate abstract.
I know.
And it's really hard to do something that looks like nice abstract.
Okay. I feel for you, because I hated to do these abstract things when I was in college too, and they made me do it, and I gritted my teeth and did it. And so if you can, just think, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to hang a bunch of clouds together or a bunch of bones together. If you can think about it just that much to objects, or objectifying it, by, okay, like, I can't think of his name now. And he was the guy in my PowerPoint presentation, the English sculptor who really had a lot of bones in his studio, and his sculptures looked like a whole bunch of bones stuck together. If you can find a hook or a handle like bones or clouds or something that you really like as a basic form that you can make, several of those chunks and chunk several of those things together, probably in a large shape with maybe a negative space running through the middle of it, because negative spaces are like the first refuge of a scoundrel for non-objective abstract art. We usually put a big chunk on one side, a little chunk on the other side, because you don't want them to balance out perfectly, and a negative space that's kind of a weird shaped negative space, and then boom, suddenly you've got the start of a non-objective sculpture. And then we just play with what these forms are going to be, and they just evolve like that. I know it's frustrating because you kind of want to have an idea of what the end point is going to be so you can sculpt towards the end point. And this takes the whole end point away, and it's a journey about trying to find form along the steps of the journey, which makes you tear your hair out, and pretty soon everybody looks like me because they have no hair. Sorry about that. But this is the struggle. This is what we do. And maybe if I can just leave the webcam on today, you guys can stay in the Zoom and talk to each other and see if you guys can make it make any sense for each other if my big mouth is out of the picture, and you can have more of a classroom lab experience. And you don't have to stay if you have to go and do something else, but you're sure welcome to stay and sculpt and just visit, commiserate, and talk with each other while you're sculpting. That'd be fine. I think I'm going to turn off the recording for now so I can have a 45-minute recording that's nice and distinct that I can put up. And then the rest of the time is going to be free form time for you guys. So having said that, I'm going to turn off the recording for now. So thank you guys for doing this for now. And then I'm going to, where's the recording button? It's hidden, of course. So I'm going to